All right, good evening, everyone. We'll get our meeting started. Rich can join us when he is available to jump on here. I think he'll be here shortly. So with that said, we can begin our meeting, our July 21st, 2020 Board of Trustees public meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. All can please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So we have public comment this evening. I know we have one submission, possibly more. I don't see any participants here, but anyone could raise their hand to make public comment. That said, Russell, if you can, I believe we have the one public comment to be read into the record. If there's any more, feel free to read that as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. This is from Hampton's Hot Yoga. This is a proposed use for Agawam Park for yoga sessions in lieu of using our building on Job's Lane due to being eliminated from all reopening phases, with no idea if or when we might be able to reopen at all. Still, there are the overhead costs, insurance, utilities, SBA loans, and no revenue for 4 months. There's no way of having a few classes in the park will come close to our normal summer revenues that we depend on to carry the business through in the off seasons. I deeply appreciate a contractual licensing fee arrangement of 10% of revenues brought in by holding classes in Agawam Park. Thank you for your consideration. Lynette Crawford, Hampton's Hot Yoga.
Thank you, Russell. Is there any additional public comment this evening?
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay. Thank you, Russell. There are no board presentations tonight, but we do have a public hearing. That's the proposed local law regarding vacant storefronts. And if I guess Brian can take this one from here, explaining where we're at. And I'm also happy to make a motion to open the hearing. So I'd like to make a motion to open the hearing, proposed local law vacant storefronts.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Brian.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Brian, thank you very much. I also just wanted to thank Alexandra for her hard work here. It looks like we're pretty close. So, Brian, if you'd like to maybe update us as to where we're at, for those listening this evening, we can provide them a quick update and just kind of let us know the intent of the law and kind of what this will do.
Yep, I'm happy to do that, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. You recall at the last public meeting, we had the public hearing on this. We kept the public hearing open for any additional comments. I'll just ask Russell if we received any additional public comments on the public hearing.
The only comment we got was from the Southampton Village Planning Commission, which said it had no comment at all.
Okay, so that's good. So with no additional public comment and no one signed up for public comment tonight, the only issue is the vote on the public hearing. So if the board has any other comments or tweaks it needs to make to the legislation, they can do that now. Otherwise, they can move to the vote.
Thank you, Brian. My one thing I'd love to hear from the board. My one small change would essentially be the size of the artwork or covering. My belief, especially after speaking to some business owners, being one myself, I think 50% would be a good minimum without a maximum percentage. This way, we don't force anyone to there's certain businesses that like to cover their entire storefront in the off season. Alice, Olivia, Intermix being two of them, but I think that 50% might be a good area. But that would be my one amendment here. But would love to hear some comments from the board if there are any.
So the part right now is 25% to 75%. Is that what we said last meeting?
Yeah, the legislation is drafted now says the aggregate area of window displays shall not exceed 25% of the storefront window.
But didn't we add on something last week where we said it can go up to 75%? The minimum was 25%?
We discussed it and we held that open until the vote for tonight. So if we want to make that change, we could add that tonight, Trustee.
Right. I think going bigger than 25 is good. I do what the mayor said about Alice, Olivia, and those other ones. I find them to be a good touch, and The one thing we do go back to is the fact of the matter is when it comes to some emergency services, being able to look in and see if something's going on. Um, if they do have windows that face the street, that makes it easier. If they don't, then that presents another problem. We did talk about having an area around the whole window, whether it be a foot or something where someone could peek in, or a door. It's something I think still needs to be looked at. I don't have a problem with it going up to not having a max either. It's just being able to look in, especially when it comes to emergencies, should be something that is included.
So do we want to say shall not exceed 75%? And the floor, would be 50%. But again, if you're going to hang artwork, it might be difficult to get to that ratio on a floor minimum.
Why don't we add a caveat that maybe there should be some ability for any storefront to have some view inside in the case of emergency. I would hate to have a store like Alice and Olivia get penalized for doing what they've done for the last 5 years or so, or a store like Intermix that's been there for quite some time to be penalized because I believe they currently cover 100% or so. But maybe, Brian, you could help us with some type of carve out that just kind of says there should be some emergency ability to look into it.
Sure. So you want to put in a minimum of 50% with no maximum, and then put in maybe a caveat that with reasonable viewability by emergency services.
Sounds good. Trustee Parrish, does that work for you?
Yeah, and again, like I said, it can be on the door, like we had talked about before, whether or not it's facing the street or not. I guess that doesn't really matter as long as if there is a situation when an emergency service, police officer, fire needs to come by, take a look inside. If there is something going on, they have that ability to do it without having to go to another measure. So yes.
Good idea.
Just a quick question for that. A few of our landlords are looking to rent out their properties, and one of the reasons why we enacted this or put this legislation forward is that we just didn't see a dark storefront and a little sign for rent. So with regard to their perspective, they had indicated, I think in earlier meetings, they wanted people to be able to see the space. So that's why I thought we had gone up to this 75% number. If there's viewing opportunity from an emergency standpoint, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean there's a little square or?
Yeah, just that there would be ability to at least look in if there's any kind of activity going on. Reasonable commercial business owners want that anyway, in case they see unauthorized people running around inside their space.
Mm-hmm. But landlords who are looking to rent their space want people to see and feel their space, and we want that window covering to be aesthetically pleasing with the character of the village. So I'm just wondering, would that little spot that we're referencing, what does that mean exactly?
So really just reasonable viewability. It's really, it's up to the administrator actually on the approval, the way it's drafted. But, if you say 75%, let's just say if we leave to a minimum of 75%, that will leave 25% of their box still open in some way, whether they do it as one side, they box the window completely. I mean, it's really kind of up to the aesthetic of the landlord, but just want the ability to be able to see, inside, not be completely blocked. I mean, I understand the mayor's point about the 100%, but you do want to have the ability to look inside that space. And, if they are trying to rent it, have potential tenants look inside to see what the arrangement of columns are and what have you.
Exactly. So are we solving both of those with that change?
I think, Mayor, maybe we say if we say a minimum of 75%, then the landlord has 25% to play with on clear or again viewability inside.
That's great. I was actually initially suggesting only a minimum of 50%, which would allow the landlord more viewability. But I'm okay with either option.
It's really up to the board. They want to say 50, they want to say 75. I don't necessarily would say 100, because I think, again, to Trustee Allen's point on the concern about somebody covering it up completely and we want to have that viewability. But I mean, I think if you say a minimum of 50 or 75 gives them at least our goal of having coverage and preserves the landlord's ability to have people look inside.
And to the mayor's point of raising it from 25 to 50, Mayor Warren, you're hearing from your business constituents that they feel that's just a little too small, the 25%.
That's right. The whole point is to add to the aesthetic value of the village, and again, for those vacant storefronts that are kind of maybe taking away from the really how great our streets are. 25 just seemed a bit small and defeated the essence of the legislation. So I thought that was a good compromise.
Just adding on to that, I received an email, so I apologize for not sharing it with the entire board, from James Slezak, copying many people within the board of the Southampton Arts Association. Their suggestion, just an idea, was to be able to place a 50-inch flat screen TV in the store behind the window to be able to show art on a loop from a flash drive. They said that's becoming more common. I don't know how that works with our legislation, but if it's a small window and it meets the mayor's 50%, that probably would work. Is there anything in the legislation that would preclude it?
I think that would probably be okay.
And just throwing it out to the rest of the board, it obviously it's the first you're hearing it, so.
Are there any board members that have any questions or comments or suggestions about Trustee Allen's suggestion? My only thought there is we should just do a quick spot check on a pre-existing legislation that talks about having electronic devices in windows. I know in East Hampton Village, I believe there's some law that you can't do that in East Hampton Village. I don't know if our village has that. We can definitely look it up real quick, but we would maybe then just have to amend that part of our code in order to accommodate the screen and electronic.
Jesse, I do believe there is something in the building code that says you can't allow that, so it should be looked into.
Yeah. So maybe we adopt it tonight. We can always make that amendment later to add that permission. Sometimes there are aesthetic concerns about TVs, facing forward and facing out to the street, especially on a darkened kind of a night. But I think let's enact. My recommendation would be to enact this tonight, and then we can always make that amendment if we need to. It doesn't take very long for us to do that.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for their help here. Do we have any additional comments from the board? Or I know that looks like Rob just joined us. I'm not sure if he has any comments, but any comments from our participants or additional comments from the board? Okay. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to close the Brian.
Yeah, just one thing. Before you do that, someone should make the motion on whatever the consensus is on the minimum, the 50% or 75%, and then they can move that as the motion in the second for adoption.
Thanks, Brian. Would you mind making the motion just because you've got the specifics there? And I'll
just a motion to adopt the amendment to Chapter 108, adopting the window display requirement, and with a aggregate area of window display changed to 50%.
With no, with no maximum, other with the caveat of the
reasonable viewability for emergency services.
All right, excellent. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Now, question, Brian, is this the adoption of the local law?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Parrish.
Aye.
Trustee Polaro.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for that. I think that's a. Do you know what? Okay, we'll keep on going. I appreciate everyone's hard work on this, and looking forward to the positive results from this legislation. Brian, do we need to make a motion to close this now?
No, the vote on the approval closes the motion.
Okay, excellent. Okay. That being said, we can move forward to communications to the board. There's two communications to the board. The first is the Bridgehampton Fire District, which is a request to increase the number of dispatchers, and we appreciate them, the Bridgehampton Fire District, sharing that with us, and I'm sure they'd be happy to hear that we'll be adding to the number of dispatchers tonight in a later resolution. So we appreciate their feedback and request. And then in addition, there's a second communication to the board from Michael Azotos regarding the placement of temporary art throughout the village. And we also appreciate his communication to the board. It has been received and was part of our packets this evening. We now have the suggested resolutions. So as per usual, Russell, I'll let you take the suggested resolutions from here.
Entertain a motion resolved that the claims for the warrants dated July 21st, 2020, totaling $10,284.81, warrant number 5, general fund, fiscal year 1920, $488,248.71, warrant number 4 for the general fund, $11,260.96, warrant number 2, capital reserve fund, and the village payrolls for the period from July 3rd, 2020 to July 16th, 2020 be audited and approved.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Parrish. Just real quickly, in the general fund warrant, the larger bills are the annual fire from Suffolk County Water Authority, the fire hydrant rental, the August monthly health insurance premium, the annual fire department hose testing, and the bills from PSE&G. All in favor?
Russell, before we take a quick vote here, I just had a couple quick questions. The first, just a couple of the bigger expenses. Barnwell House of Tires for $5,200. Do you know what that is?
Those are fire truck tires.
Okay. And then we've got Brothers, the police store. Do you know what that's for?
Those are uniforms for the police department.
Okay, thank you. Just a few other quick questions. Nelson Pope and Voorhees, 9,800. Just curious if you have any hours. Do you know?
8,000 of it is for the work on the grant application for the resolution drawing for the Lake Agawam hydrogen peroxide work.
Great. And that's very helpful. Did they just submit all these bills today? It looks like they're all from 7/14 or 7/20.
They all came in this week, yeah.
Okay. All right. And you touched upon the Suffolk Water Authority. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves attached schedule of budget transfers to eliminate line item overages for the period of July 9th, 2020 through July 21st, 2020 for the fiscal year ending May 31st, 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
So most of these are just, and I realize that the board may not have them in front of them, but these are journal entries that essentially are year-end, to cover that sometimes certain payroll accounts in one account will go over by some, and you have to move monies, to and from just to tie out for the year-end May 31st, 2020.
And would you mind just walking us through what those budget transfers are and what the total amounts are?
I don't have that in front of me. If you'd like to table this until the next meeting, we can. I was hoping to have the entire schedule prepared tonight, but what I was looking to do is tie everything in before the July 31st, before July 31st of this month, with regards to that. So if you'd like, we can entertain a motion to table this to the next meeting if you'd like.
Do you have the aggregate amount? I mean, if it's under $1,000,
it's not. It's not under $1,000. Right. So we'll entertain a motion to table the resolution.
Is that okay to the board? Would you want to table, or I think it might be best, since we don't have the exact numbers in front of us, just to quickly table it and do it at our Thursday meeting and 2 weeks. I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution is tabled. Entertain a motion, resolve the Board of Trustees hereby ratifies the authorization to close Main Street from Hampton Road to Job's Lane and Job's Lane from Main Street to O'Connell Drive we're going to change that to 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on evenings to be specified by the village administrator as directed by the village board for Southampton in the streets.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees pursuant to the adoption of the Lake Agawam Management Plan of 2020 is considered a type 2 action, and that no environmental review will be undertaken by the Board of Trustees, and be it further resolved that the Lake Agawam Management Plan of 2020 is hereby approved and adopted, and be it further resolved that this resolution shall take effect immediately.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby classifies the proposed project of the Lake Agawam hydrogen peroxide treatment for water quality benefit as an unlisted action and issues a negative declaration pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the proposed action, and this determination as outlined in the negative declaration, and be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the implementation of the Lake Agawam hydrogen peroxide treatment for water quality benefit on behalf of the village and its residents, and further authorizes Gary Gillespie, Superintendent of Public Works, to sign all required application forms necessary to secure the necessary authorizations from permitting agencies for the proposed action.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain
And
a motion.
also,
I'm
before
sorry.
the sixth resolution, I just wanted to thank Gary. I know he's at our meeting right now, but just want to thank him for really working hard on this. This is going to be a really incredible project for the village. We're hoping this will have the right effect on some of the harmful algae blooms, but also want to thank Gary. Gary's been doing this behind the scenes and deserves a very big thank you. And we hope that this becomes a successful project. So it'll certainly be a pilot program, but again, just wanted to give Gary the thank you he deserves for this. Sorry for that interruption, Russell.
Entertain a motion resolved the Board of Trustees hereby approves dribble in the Hamptons Youth Basketball for the basketball courts on Windmill Lane weekdays through September 4th, 2020.
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby ratifies the approval of Paul Murphy and Charity Robinson to provide djembe drumming and dance lessons Thursdays on a 2-week trial basis at a village location determined by the village, and authorizes the village administrator to approve additional dates if mutually agreed upon by the village and the applicant.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion, Russell?
Yes.
This is the group that was coming in, they were thinking of Dozier Park, correct?
They were thinking of Dozier. This past week, they were actually in the northwest corner of SAC, actually kind of behind Wrist Liquors and across from the bank, Capital One Bank.
Okay.
We did not hear, anything in favor or in opposition. And they are working with SAC to potentially find a permanent place on the SAC grounds. And again, I would wait for a little bit of feedback about last week and determine where we're going to be this Thursday, because there is a conflict on the SAC grounds on Thursday.
Okay.
What are we thinking?
We are thinking possibly Dozier, but again, I know we have to speak with the, with the town with regards to that. And I also need to speak with Charity. We weren't unable to touch base, earlier this week so far as to how she felt it went as well. That's why we're doing a 2-week trial. I think she's looking to see whether or not this location works for her. We're looking to see whether or not it's a positive for the village. There have been some discussions that the drums can, at times be a little loud, and potentially the concern is that if we have other activities on the same night, whether or not the drumming might interfere with some of the other activities. So that's that it's a work in progress between both the village and this very good group that provides free kind of historic and cultural dance and music lessons.
And what are we thinking time-wise?
They start at 4:30 and end by 7:30.
Oh, okay. So it's not really into the night.
Correct.
Okay.
Starts out with drum lessons for an hour and a half, and then it switches to dance lessons for the second hour and a half.
This wasn't the same group we saw at Cooper's, was it?
I don't believe so, and they are not affiliated with or participate with the group that for years and years were down at Sag Main either.
Sag Main. Okay.
Both of the instructors are affiliated with the Ross School.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. It could also make sense if they're looking for another location. Russell, if you don't mind just reaching out to them, and you can connect them with Tom Edmonds. I know the History Museum always loves having people there too, so that could be another great location if they're looking for additional real estate. And obviously that's their own property there. But okay, again, thank you. Just wanted to give you the heads up on that.
No, that's great. Good feedback. Thank you. All right. Entertain a motion resolved. The Board of Trustees hereby approves the Hamptons Youth Baseball Camp at Downs Family Park on weekday mornings from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. through September 4th, 2020.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved. The Board of Trustees hereby approves movie nights coordinated by the Southampton Village Youth Committee and Southampton History Museum at Downs Family Park on July 22nd, August 19th, and 22nd, 2020, starting at 7:30 p.m.
So moved. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved. The Board of Trustees hereby approves Andrew Gosden as a probationary member of the Southampton Hose Company No. 1 effective July 9th, 2020.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved. The Board of Trustees hereby appoints Dane Neller to the Budget and Finance Committee.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Request discussion.
Need a second first?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
So just a quick question. We have, and this is not a reflection on Dane, who I have not met. We have a lot of committees. And by way of background, the town has 55,000 people, and apparently they have 12 appointed boards, including Transportation, Housing Authority, Licensing, and then they have 30 some odd committees like the CPF Advisory Board, Pine Beetle Task Force, CTV, and everything else. We have 31 residents, and we have 8 appointed boards, and we have all these additional committees. And my only question is, well, what is our process for bringing on people? Because when I started looking at some of the names on all these new committees, it's heavily skewed male to female, about 4 to 1. And I guess my question is, 53% of this village are women. So I just wanted to understand if our committees are reflective of our village community and diversity at large. And again, no offense to this wonderful candidate who's willing to step up, but how are we going about this?
I think how we basically do this is the whole point of this was we have a really dynamic community who wants to get involved, and these committees are an ability for or an opportunity for our community members to help the village and do it so on a volunteer basis. So I think Dane, who's got a finance and business background, simply wanted to help our village and offered his services to us on a volunteer basis. So that's really how we would do so. Similar to how we've done, other committees like the Business Revitalization or the Clean Water Committee. I don't see why we shouldn't do this. I think he'd be a very strong person here on the committee.
So is the process anyone who comes to us gets put forward and placed on a committee? Because obviously I had suggested, Dee Dee Moan and Gloria Dios, and then or Rose, and I think Rose is on that committee. But I'm just wondering how we're selecting individuals for these committees and how they hear about it and how they know there's an opening, because I have a number of people saying, what are these committees? What are they doing? How can I help? And so, how are we doing this from a process standpoint? I've passed along every name of every person who was interested, to I think this entire board, and I just wondered how we're ref- reflecting our entire village.
Do you have any suggestions how we could improve the process?
I think I do. I think we as a group could probably come up with a good process together. But it does concern me that we have all these committees now, and if I see the representation on these committees, I don't know if it's reflective of our village. But that's not an indictment on all the wonderful people who've joined these committees. All I'm saying is, what process do we have in place? Is it working? And what are all these committees doing? We have about half the number of the committees for a village our size as Southampton town that has 55,000 people.
Russell, how many committees do we have for right now?
31, I think it is.
We have 31 committees.
Yes.
How many of those are active?
Top
of your head.
20.
Brian, you had mentioned some thoughts about what's your take on committees? What do you feel that their strengths and weaknesses can be?
So I think that the village of Southampton has an abundance of riches in its people, and it's very lucky to have so many people that want to be involved in village government. And committees are official bodies of the village. So I think that it would behoove the village, the mayor and this board, to look at, again, this is not the context of this applicant for this board, but more of a global look, to look at what committees are set forth in the village code itself, which ones are legally required to be appointed, understand what their missions are, understand what their members are, what they do. And again, a lot of these committees, probably all of them actually, do very valuable work. But committees are official actions of the board. They're of the village. They're official bodies of the village, and we should evaluate, if there's overlap, if the members could be otherwise used in other places. Because again, you don't want so many people in so many, pulling the village in so many directions, that you don't necessarily get a very cohesive perspective. And one other thing I'll just add, on that is the village board of trustees and mayor are the elected officials. And I would never want to get into a position where a committee of the village, say, would take a contrary view of the mayor and the board of trustees, because that's problematic. I mean, that's they're appointed, you're elected by the people to make the final decisions. So I think we should think about all the points that were raised tonight are good points to think about. On one, how many do we have? Two, do we need so many in a village that's, would you say, 10% the size of population of the town of Southampton, perhaps less? Do we need all those committees? And should we reevaluate maybe what some of those missions are and consolidate them or move them towards something global? But I do think it would behoove the board to look at a more holistic view on these committees and their missions.
And Councillor Egan, are committees is their function to be in existence ad infinitum, or?
It depends. And again, I make the distinction on the statutory commissions, the village code committees. Those have set purposes with members that have staggered terms and appointed these are the via the vehicle of the organizational meeting. Everyone should be appointed to a term and let that board rotate for not only for new blood, for new ideas, but to avoid that kind of Politburo kind of structure where someone sits on a committee perhaps longer than necessary.
Funny, you should use that term, Politburo.
Yeah.
The other question is, we also have the opportunity to add alternates to our statutory boards, which Planning Board, Architectural Review Board, Zoning Board of Appeals. So the quasi-judicial being Planning Board and the ZBA. So that's an area I know that the mayor has expressly agreed that that's an area to focus on as well.
And could I also just build on that same point? We had a letter from our Ethics Commission Chairman, Christian Pico, who, again, a wonderful person to have in service of our village, very dedicated. And again, I want to put before the board that he wrote the last meeting urging us to make alternate appointments to some of these boards. So we should really consider that. I understand that this year is a strange year because our reorganizational meeting, along with the village election, was adjourned by COVID and the governor's executive orders. But we should take up his charge in considering alternates on these boards so that they can function with the proper quorum and they can go about continuing their work and have these people sitting on it, and potentially an excellent field team are members of these committees who expressed a sincere interest to assist our village.
Yes, thanks, Brian. I appreciate you answering that question. And Russell, can we get on that with the alternates? It is something that's good to have, in the waiting in case someone, can't make it, or, any situation comes up where they have to, be away from the board for a period of time. So can we get that on that, within the next week and get some people lined up? And I do believe we have people waiting. So if we can just get that resolution at the next meeting, that would be great. Get one more thing off our plate.
Brian, one other question on the committees. The recommendations that they make to the board, if we don't follow them, is there what can happen, could happen? Is it okay for us not to do it? I mean, how does that play out?
So, the only committees, I want to draw the distinction between the statutory committees, the village code committees, and also the boards that are appointed pursuant to village law. So under village law, you have to have a zoning board and a planning board, and they are independent boards that are appointed by this board, by the mayor and this board, and they function completely independently and arrive at their own independent decisions. Committees, again, are very task-oriented, where their mission is set out specifically, and then eventually either is completed, sunsetted, or the mission is added to, where their role is expanded. And the concern with multiple committees, and even in some villages are moving towards consolidating other boards and committees that were other boards now becoming advisory committees to a certain extent. You really don't want to have multiple committees, like say potentially drawing a different conclusion than this board would, because as Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. The buck stops with you as the elected officials. So, and you really wouldn't want to be in a position where, in say a litigation, where a committee comes out to a different conclusion, and based on your judgments, you say draw a different conclusion. That differing conclusion will be Exhibit A, guaranteed, to any litigation papers.
Do we have members? Oh, sorry, Andrew.
With regard to that, would that be the same if the committees were disbanded and task force were brought for each specific individual thing that we needed or questions that this board has, and set out a task for everyone to kind of come to, and would it be the same, or is, because they're not mandated by resolution, it would be slightly different?
you know, it really depends upon how they were originally organized, which is why I think, you know, if we have 31 committees, maybe it's worthwhile, you know, to allow Russell and I to look at those, see what those missions are, get a list of them, get them back to this board and with the mayor and have a discussion with what they look like and what they should be. Because to your point, Trustee Polaro, you know, if you have a task and that task is completed, the committee is over, so to speak. You know, it is, the mission is accomplished. So I think it's worthwhile to think about that and even have these on, maybe even in a reorganizational meeting, have them sunset by their own terms. But I think Mayor, I think the sense is to again, we're getting away from this particular resolution 11, which we should move on. But I think this holistic discussion is worthwhile having. It's healthy for government. I think let's have Russell and I look at this total and the committee operations, and then we'll be able to report back to you with some of our ideas.
All right, I would appreciate you know, your assessment on the committees, whether they're effective. I will say, you know, we've got Rob Coburn here, and I think he's done a great job on the Clean Water Committee, and they've put a tremendous amount of work into the matrix, which we've been working on for a year, which basically led to the DEC harmful algae bloom plan, and has led to this, you know, hydrogen peroxide treatment to some extent here. So the committees have done some good work, and we'd love to, you know, perhaps they could be streamlined or made more efficient. Perhaps they could become something else. You know, but in the meantime, you know, we've got a singular appointment here, and so you know, we'd just love to move forward with that, and you know, so.
Okay, second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees creates the civil service exempt title Village Prosecutor, and be it further resolved that Mayor Warren brings forward Assistant Village Attorney Richard Fernan to be appointed by the Board of Trustees to the position of Village Prosecutor, subject to approval of Suffolk County Civil Service. All right, if it's not being moved, is there a resolution to table or no action? Okay, we'll move on. Is that correct, Brian? Move on?
Yes, no, there has to be a motion on the
Okay, all right.
There's no motion on that resolution.
Very
No
good.
action.
Therefore,
Is there any reason? Okay, so there's no discussion, right?
Nope. Motion and a second for discussion.
Brian, do you think it makes sense to have discussion?
I like discussing all resolutions. I don't see a harm in it.
I mean, we're elected officials. We're here to discuss for the public. But if there's no, you know, if we don't want to discuss, that's the board's prerogative.
We don't have all our members here, correct?
correct.
That hasn't stopped discussion at other meetings. Brian, we'll take our cue from you with really, you know.
It's the board's parliamentary prerogative if they want to move the second or any of these items. If they don't want to take any action on them, they don't have to. If there's no motion, there's no second. The item is passed, not passed by resolution, just passed over. Marked no action.
Okay. Okay. Fine by me. I personally, you know, I prefer discussion. Discussion is what we're supposed to do, especially legislators are supposed to discuss. But again, thank you for that, Counselor. Russ, we've got the next resolution as well.
Wait, Mayor, you didn't make a motion on that, correct?
I said so moved.
And then we didn't hear that. You must have been on mute because nobody heard that.
Okay. So I so moved.
So there's a motion. Okay. All right.
I will second for discussion.
Yeah. So Russell or Brian, can you take me through this new position?
Sure. Russell, do you want to take a crack?
Yeah.
You talk to civil service, and I'm happy to jump in as well.
Sure. So, several months ago, pre-COVID, the village board looked to bring on an employee to assist the village attorney. And at the time, the village did not have an opening for the position of assistant village attorney. In working with Suffolk County Civil Service, I was able to work with them and come up with the fact that currently our assistant village attorney, Richard Fernan, spends 98% of his time working for the village in the court, and that if the duty statement was written appropriately, that the Suffolk County Civil Service would not have an issue with us creating a village prosecutor position. But let me back up one step. In the interim, because the board had agreed to bring on an individual to help, I also worked with them to get what is normally a 90-day temporary appointment. They actually, because of our situation and the good relationship that we have with Suffolk County Civil Service, agreed to a 6-month temporary appointment to a competitive civil service title. So in essence, we're bypassing any list because we're just using someone in a temporary position. And they generally allow it 90 days without questions. They allowed it for 120 days. That time has passed. In the interim, as I said, they would allow us to create, hasn't been done yet, a position called village prosecutor. Our assistant village attorney would qualify and could be appointed to that position, which would then vacate the one title, the one position we're allowed in the title of assistant village attorney, and an appointment could be made to that title. So it is one way for us to be permitted to have in our employ both an assistant village attorney and a prosecutor.
And Russell stated it perfectly. It's this is a machination of civil service and kind of a legacy appointments to a certain extent, because Rick Fernan serves as our prosecutor, and that's the position. 12 and 13 have to be read together. Resolutions 12 and Resolution 13 have to be read together because that's what is seeking to be clarified by civil service in the positions.
How many attorneys do we have right now in the village? 5, 6?
You're the village attorney. You have the assistant village attorney. You have the village prosecutor. You have counsel to the planning board. You have counsel to the zoning board.
But we also have an attorney handling Article 78, and we have our labor attorney.
Correct. You have labor counsel, and you will always have special counsel for litigations. And they, obviously they're, as we passed a couple meetings ago, depending upon what their specialty was or involvement with the cases, you'll have special counsel on litigation matters, yes.
And we have a number of attorneys handling litigation matters, as I understand it, at least 2 or 3.
Correct.
Do we need 2 attorneys?
Well, 12 is for the village prosecutor, which we definitely need. 13 is the question on the assistant village attorney position. So
they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, no, they do. Yeah, but just the context of what was moved was this position of the creation of village prosecutor and the appointment there.
So you like the creation of a village prosecutor then, having he's there most of the time?
Absolutely.
In actuality, if I can just weigh in, is that if, occasionally civil service asks us to rewrite a duty statement because it's been, there so long. And if we were to write our current assistant village attorney's duty statement, they would probably come back and say that person acts more as in the title of prosecutor. And, that would probably be the more appropriate title for the person who fills that particular role.
Thank you, Russell, because that was a question from my standpoint. Councilor Fernan has been in that role for how many years?
Long time.
Long time. So now we're shifting his title or his duties. What is he going to be doing differently?
Well, this is the nuances. Russell could talk to this too, but this is the nuances of civil service. You will be doing nothing differently. He will be doing absolutely nothing. But his civil service title will more accurately reflect what he actually is doing. So again, it's just it's a civil service title change with zero impact on duty. Wouldn't you agree, Russell?
Yeah, and one of the things that they do is because they don't necessarily want to upset an apple cart, what would normally happen is if the day that Rick decides that he's done this long enough, and then we went to refill it, they would ask us to refresh the duty statement. And once we did that, that is when they would basically say, those duties require the title of prosecutor as opposed to assistant village attorney. That often happens, more in larger municipalities where someone's job kind of migrates to something different, and they basically, what they do is they call it redlining. So that title stays in existence for that particular task or set of tasks until the person leaves, and then when you go to refill it, they require you to refill it with a different title.
So the reason why I guess I'm hesitant and I'd like to table this discussion is I'd like to understand a little more what all the attorneys are doing. Are we tapping into their resources appropriately and efficiently from a fiscal standpoint? And what does our legislative runway look like? Meaning, what do we have planned over the next 6 to 12 months? And do we have sufficient resources decked against that to get it done? So, and since these are personnel issues, I'm happy to have this discussion during exec session, but that's kind of where I'm coming from, because we're adding a net new role. Civil service or not, we need to have a clear understanding why that is required. What is it? What's the gap we're filling?
So, just to talk about 12 in particular, there's zero impact on the budget. It's already budgeted. Zero impact on personnel. It's already filled by a person. And zero impact on duties because the duties are already being executed. So I think certainly, really 12 and 13, both, those statements count for both. We can't function without a village prosecutor.
But the question is, can we function without an assistant village attorney? Right?
That's the question for 13. I mean, I think that the assistant village attorney's role in Southampton is a bargain for what you get for the hours that she puts in, and for what the annual salary is. I think the village of Southampton is getting an incredible bargain for it.
Again, I'd like to table this and make it a discussion post this meeting, an exec session. I hear what you're saying, Councilor Egan.
If there's no other discussion, did you want to put that in the form of a motion?
I move to table this discussion to exec session so that we can resolve the, I guess it's the assistant attorney position properly.
So just for purposes, looking to table would be resolutions 12 and resolution number 12.
And 13.
And 13.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding. I thought we had to.
In order to move on, we either need to vote up or down because we have a motion and a second, or there needs to be a motion to table the resolution, and there can be a vote on tabling the resolution, which again could be brought up later in the meeting. It could be tabled until, our next meeting. But just, you have to act on the resolution that's laid down in front of us now.
So
All
I
right, so we
move
can table this, guys.
second. Second.
I don't know if I made the motion. I don't know if we have the
Motion was made by Trustee Allen to table. Is there a second to table?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so Resolution 14 has already been taken out of order, which was the adoption of local law number 6. So we entertain a motion resolved that Mayor Warren brings forward the name John Gregory to the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation to fill the unexpired term of Curtis Highsmith, expiring June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, is a resolution necessary for this? I thought with an unexpired term that the mayor can appoint.
A resolution is not necessary, but my goal was to include everybody in this and would love for it to be a board decision. Would prefer, even though it could be done unilaterally, I don't want to do anything unilaterally. I really want to include the entire board in the process. So it was just giving the board an opportunity to do this as a team instead of me doing it unilaterally, and would just like everyone to work together and, approve it together.
Okay. Can you speak to the gentleman, please, Mr. Mayor?
John Gregory was interviewed by Susan Stevenson. He was approved, was given the Susan's would like to have it. I know Trustee Parrish also had said that we're looking forward to fill all of the boards. He has a design background. He also has a corporate background. Cares tremendously about the village. I thought that he'd be a good middle ground between someone who likes historical preservation but also agrees in some type of development, and think that he was kind of a good moderate approach here. We could have Susan speak a bit further. I don't know, Russell, do you have his resume for?
No, I don't have a resume, but I do know that that you and the chair of the ARB did review resumes and held interviews.
That's all. As long as it's gone through the process and Susan is opined and I have no problem. Thank you for that. That's perfect.
So it moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Entertain a motion resolved that Mayor Warren brings forward the name of Brittany Zigrosser to Public Safety Dispatcher 1 from the Suffolk County Civil Service Certified Eligibles List, number 20EL131, in the Police Department at a salary of $49,194.95, effective August 3rd, 2020.
So moved.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion.
Okay.
Just quickly, aren't we supposed to be having 2? I'm glad this is being brought up because this has been, long enough knowing what we got going on with the dispatchers and what they're working. But aren't we supposed to have 2? Wasn't that what was brought up a couple months ago?
Russell, I'm not sure if you'd like to handle it.
They're looking to hire 2. They're down a few and they need them. So this is one of the 2 that they're asking. Is that correct?
That we are at this time we are hiring 1. There is budget for an additional. Once this hire is done, we would, because we've actually made 2 hires off of this particular list,
Right.
we would need to send the list back and ask for the list again. recanvass. There are some other, civil service does offer other methods of hiring, which again, that I think I'll reserve on that. And there are some people who might be interested, and there are some resumes and applications. But with regards to the eligibles list that is named here in this particular resolution, we only had one hire left on that list.
So this list is then done, and then it goes to a new list. And what took so long for this to go on? And was there talk? I mean, I keep hearing things, but was there talk of the town taking over, the town coming in, or the county? Was that mayor? Is there any type of truth to that talk?
Russell?
I've held no conversations with either the town or the county with regards to dispatch. I do know that, we have a, intermunicipal agreement to, in case of disaster to, have coverage from one another, but that's the extent of anything that that I'm aware of.
No, I've heard some things like that. Does this board agree we got to have another one soon? Can we get on that and get that filled in? So we have a couple different fire districts. We got a letter tonight from Bridgehampton. We have some other ones that are interested in coming. I'm hearing. So, I mean, it would be good to get this wrapped up. It is a vital piece of our village. And again, because of the fact that we have such good response rates, and with all the people that we do have out here now, and then coming into the fall, we're going to still see that, increase in population. This is just something that needs to be done. And I, implore this board to, get another candidate and get it going.
We have significant overtime too, is my understanding.
I would only address two things. The first thing, as Russell pointed out, we've got to go back to the civil service list. So, much like Resolution 12, sometimes civil service does create an additional, layer of the process. So, when we spoke to civil service, again, Russell can explain more. That's kind of one of his strong suits. So Russell can talk to any board member about the civil service responsibilities that we had and what we need to do in order to move forward if we chose to do a second position. And then in addition to that point, I think in order to make a hire, personally, I like to do a data-driven analysis, and I like to see data. We asked to pull data on Memorial Day weekend, 911 phone calls. I think Russell probably has that. We haven't received any data yet for July 4th, but we of course need to address the data. And then when we get the data on 911 phone calls, what type of 911 phone calls are they? Are they 911 phone calls for emergencies, or are they 911 phone calls for people making a complaint about a restaurant? Or are they just a inner 911 phone call? Is it somebody clocking in and clocking out? And so we really need to break down that data in order to make the right decisions, I think, moving forward, in 2020. But, Russell probably has some data on Memorial Day weekend 911 phone calls. But again, the real holdup here or reagent is the civil service. So that's why we moved forward today with one. And I'm very happy to do that. I think that's a great thing, and very proud of our both dispatchers and departments for what they've done. And so maybe Russell, if you can opine here, not opine, but just provide us with the Memorial Day weekend data. I know we pulled that.
Yeah, I don't have, I could try to pull that out. I know we were fairly consistent year over year. I don't know if Chief wants to, to add some input. I certainly can send all of that out, first thing tomorrow morning. Like I said, I do have it. I could probably pull the screen down, pull up the email that has it in it, but I'd really rather try to stick with the meeting. But again, I understand that what the mayor's asking with regards to, emergency calls versus, obviously when officers sign in, they sign in through through the dispatchers. But certainly we can get, that data. I do know that the chief did send me July 4th numbers. I just needed to put them in in the same format as the Memorial Day ones. So I'll get both of those out. as part of tomorrow's correspondence.
Russell, two questions, please. One, are we budgeted for, how much are we budgeted for in police dispatchers? Are we budgeted at 10, which is the state legal limit, or did we budget for 11 so we have, one person spare in case someone goes out on sick time or goes out on vacation, that we have someone that can replace so we're not constantly using overtime for shifts?
We, unlike what the chief was hoping we had in the budget, because he requested 12, there are 11 positions
Okay.
in the budget.
So we wouldn't be adding extra dollars by making that last hire to our operating budget. And lastly, I mean, no matter what, and maybe this is the chief or Brian, no matter what, you still need to have a minimum of 10 bodies in the chair at all times, no matter what the types of calls are, or no matter whether they don't take any calls for a day, which would probably be a blessing. And I don't know if we've ever had that, but bodies need to fill those chairs, correct?
There needs to be 2 qualified dispatchers at all times. Doesn't have to necessarily be 10 people, but makes sense.
Right, but the overtime, I mean, it's usually 5 shifts, 2, they're 10 on the 10 is the legal requirement for where we are.
Well, if we stayed at 9, it would probably cost more than double the cost of hiring another dispatcher in overtime.
Okay, thank you.
And our overtime, adding on to that, we should also understand the overtime that we've expended. And just going back to the analysis on Memorial Day I threw out this morning, one is we also have another number that comes to dispatch, which is the 2830056, is it, Chief Cummings? Not just 911.
Yeah, roughly most years the village tends to not dial 911. They tend to call 0056. The phone rings in dispatch about 60,000 times a year, with 2,000 of them being 911 calls.
And the other caution on the analysis is that Memorial Day had us at phase 2, which meant many people were still at home and not venturing out, and the variability for accidents, issues, etc. increases with people who are out and about. So one should just be mindful of that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the comments and feedback. And then, Trustee Ann, you made a good point earlier today on Resolution 11 about making hires and appointments that really reflect the community. And so I think when we make the next appointment, the second person, I think we should take that in, I think when it comes to interviews, we should have a very wide net of people that we interview here. So I would love to work with you on that to make sure that we could, make sure that at least in the interview process, we're very inclusionary. So I'd love to work with you on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Very appreciated. And I hope that extends to all corners of our village. And I know I don't want to sound like I'm a sour person on the committees. I so appreciate every person who's on the committee. But I do think, and lesson learned for me, we need to do a better job. And I try, and I know all of us try, but we need to be more aware of it. And I appreciate that comment.
Okay.
So it was moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved that Mayor Warren brings forward and the Board of Trustees ratifies the following pay rates effective July 17th, 2020. Yassine Bukasi, $13 an hour. Caroline Palumbo, $16 an hour. Cameron Highsmith, $17.75 per hour.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before I have a quick discussion item. I do think we need to revisit what our employees get paid. I think this is a great first step. We brought this forward because we thought there was several people that did need raises, but I think the village should really look at any employee who's making $11 or $12 an hour and really revisit that. I really think that when it comes to a what maybe should be a universal minimum wage of $15 per hour, I think that's something that is important to think about. But to have village employees making $11 an hour to me is unconscionable, to be honest. And I think we need to look into that. I'm glad we gave Yassine a raise, and everyone, Caroline, CCO, were very deserving of that. But I think as a board, we need to look into this and make sure that, you know, the disparity of our pay isn't an issue, not just for the really, you know, employees who really probably need raises, but also, you know, again, Trustee Allen, you brought up the, you know, the distinction between having employees that reflect their overall population here. And I think we need to revisit that as well. We've got Kathy Sweeney here, who's taking our minutes, and she's a 30-year Air Force veteran, and she's probably the lowest paid person in Village Hall. And I don't think that's appropriate, especially given her service to the country. And again, you pointed out, you know, bringing in, you know, a diverse set of people here. So I think that's something that, again, I would love to revisit with you and make sure that people get paid appropriately for the work and quality work that they're doing. That's all I've got to say in this discussion. Again, you might say not discussion, but wanted to bring that up to kind of let everyone know my thoughts on the issue.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, entertain a motion resolved, the Board of Trustees authorizes the village administrator to publish and post a notice to bidders for BioSafe Green Clean Liquid 5.0 or equivalent product. And that these bids be delivered on or before July 29th, 2020, on or before 11 a.m.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved, the Board of Trustees amends Resolution 16 of May 14th, 2020 as amended by Resolution 19 of June 23rd and Resolution number 12 of July 9th to add the following. Daily passes will also be sold on weekends and holidays on a limited number to be determined daily by the beach manager in consultation with the village administrator.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Entertain a motion resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby directs that a public hearing be held at 6 p.m. prevailing time on Thursday, August 13th, 2020 on a local law to repeal certain regulations regarding public attire and amend Article 2 of Chapter 82 to require the use of face masks and face coverings, and directs the village administrator to publish and post such notice.
So moved.
Second? Second.
Second for discussion. Mr. Mayor, can you talk us through this, please?
I believe this was added by Russell. So maybe Russell can kind of make the intro, or Brian can make the intro here.
You want to run with it, Brian?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, thanks. So this was a discussion, I think, that came about from the mayor's initiative on an amendment to the Peace and Good Order section to add the requirements for mask and face coverings, mimicking or paralleling, I should say, what the governor's executive orders are and his instructions with regard to the covering, the requiring of face masks on public property and on private property, with the exceptions that he articulated. You know, if you're under 2 or you have a medical reason. But to adopt this as a part of village law, Southampton Village Code, so that it can actually be subject to penalties and enforcement by our police department as a violation of the penal law, because it's a violation of the village code, I should say. Now, the governor's order does not have any enforcement mechanism for beyond just encouragement. And the idea here is to add the possibility for issuing violations to people who do not wear face masks as previously recommended or set forth, I should say, in the executive order.
And how the enforcement is then through the police department. And what needs to be produced if there is a gentleman or female who isn't required to wear a mask due to whatever medical condition or all of that? Where does the onus lie? How does that work?
So that's a very fair question, and I think it's the question that everybody has with regard to the enforcement of masks, as we're seeing everyone getting into conflicts with regard to who should be wearing masks and who shouldn't, and people complaining that people aren't wearing masks, and I guess and hope that people are complaining about people not wearing masks when they should be. But I think it's in those instances that the question that your question comes from, Trustee Polaro. You know, is there someone who is so obviously should be wearing a mask and is not, and should be? That's the question. Not necessarily.
No, the question goes in the reverse: is that there are some people that cannot wear masks.
Yes.
There is a gentleman I know who is autistic. He cannot wear a mask, but if you saw him walking down the street, you would not think that he is autistic, and yet people are time and time again, wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. His mother has to say he is autistic, he cannot wear a mask. Will she have to explain to the police officer that now wants to write him a ticket that, you know, he is autistic? Does he need a letter from his doctor? What sort of proof is there for that? You know, I mean, that it goes over. I mean, I would think that there are people should wear masks that are being that they're being conscientious and kind to everyone else and obligatory to wear the mask that they are, and that we might not have to legislate to do what we all know is one way to stop the spread of the virus.
I think I think you've articulated the two levels of the balance of the argument very well. I mean, I think that's part of the concern. The governor's order has no such distinction, and this proposal, again, it's for the public hearing. Just to set the public hearing. This is probably maybe a debate for then, but it's kind of a preview for it. Actually builds in an exemption that if someone has a hardship, they can apply to Russell for that exemption, or whether it's impractical or impossible for them to be able to comply. But the thought was to, based on the volume of the complaints with people not wearing masks, that the idea is to take this and give face mask enforcement some level of demonstrable teeth.
Chief, how many extra calls will this add to the call center?
Well, I mean, if you look at what's in place already, you have to ask them to social distance, and if they refuse, you can take. They just changed the state just added something to the pub, like they just put something out so we can use the public health law.
Yeah.
But it's difficult and hard to prosecute. So the general consensus from the state police through all the other departments is we're going to try and get voluntary compliance. And unless you have someone that's trying to make a statement about the masks, most people are happy to either social distance or comply and put a mask on. So I think we're gonna have to interact with people more, but I don't think the enforcement will go up a tremendous amount because most people will comply if you ask them to.
So Chief Cummings, I saw 6 ladies walk down Main Street at 10:30 a.m. yesterday, all not wearing masks. So what would you do if you saw that?
Depends on how close together they are and are they a family group? I mean, there's a lot of different what ifs to the equation that the police also would have to inquire about before making a enforcement decision.
So your police officer would approach this group and their questioning would be, are you a family unit? What's your relationship to one another? To understand if they're an intact unit of some sort.
Right.
And then if they were not wearing a mask, if this legislation were passed, what do you do? Do you write them a ticket based on this new law from the Department of Health?
No, you have to, we're supposed to ask them to social distance. And if they refuse, then we would do enforcement.
Trustee Allen, would you mind if I just jumped in here real quick?
Sure.
Again, this is, I actually agree with everybody here. Trustee Plaro made some great points, and so did you, Trustee Allen. This is number one. The point is, this is again just we're just going to have a public hearing for the public to tell us how they feel about this. We thought it was a good option to put out there. So, you know, we've had a similar discussion before, but again, just a reminder. You know, I remember we had a bit of a discussion about that versus having a public hearing, not public hearing, but you know, in the past, we had all agreed that, you know, having a public hearing was a good step forward, again, giving the public an option to give their input. And I'm sure this will draw some interesting opinions, you know, from the public. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that this was just a really great, I thought was a really creative, and really, I didn't realize, I'm surprised we didn't think of this earlier. But all this does is nothing changes from the governor executive order, but it just gives our local law enforcement the ability to actually enforce the law a bit better, or as Trustee Ostremski likes to say, give it a little teeth. And so that's all this does. It's really it's just a mirror image of the governor's executive order, but just gives our local law enforcement the ability to enforce. If I explain that wrong, Councilor Regan, you could jump in, but hopefully that really explains it. But again, to go back to that first point of, you know, we can give the public an opportunity to debate.
What two further things, just as you say, to give it teeth. Well, first of all, have you spoken to Trustee Ostremski, because he's unfortunately not on this? I'd love to know what his thoughts are. Have you spoken to him about this local law, Mr. Mayor? I
haven't spoken about this local law, but I would know how he would feel about it. But you know, he's already, you know, we appreciate his opinions and value them.
Okay.
So if I may jump in, just by the way to Chief Cummings' point, as of July 9th, there are now fines involved with non-compliance by the health department enacted. It's like code 66.3 up to $2,000. So was this written before or after that? Because I'm trying to understand if this is additive, helps us, doesn't help us. I will mention that Legislator Fleming said that a doctor told her masks equal freedom. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But what that new law that came through on the 9th, where do we stand with that? What does it give us?
The new state law for the public health violation?
Yes.
So it gives the ability for the police department to issue tickets under the public health law. But again, it's a state law as opposed to a village code law. So it's brand new. I really don't think that anyone's even really thought about it. I'll leave it at the chief, but I don't really think anyone's really thought through the implementation of a public health law violation as of yet.
Okay. So
I actually think if we get this, I don't know if anyone will speak. I was just saying, I think if we get this passed, we could actually be a real leader here. I think this is such a really good way of thinking about this, and I'm surprised we didn't think of this sooner. But I think I wouldn't be surprised to see other neighboring villages or towns or municipalities follow suit if we move forward with this.
And how does it sunset? Because this is going to go into our village code, and it's going to be there. Do we need a public hearing, you know, to end the wearing of masks? How does it sunset? Because at some stage, hopefully, we will get through this. And what are going to be the ramifications, you know, if you are not wearing a mask in public, and for whatever reason, if it happens after this board is together, you know, I would hate to see someone get a fine for not wearing a mask and everything is okay.
Yeah, excellent point. You know, I thought about drafting it with a sunset, but again, maybe because I'm Irish and I'm a big believer in the ultimate law, Murphy's Law. If I drafted that sunset, I'm not going to get that wish fulfilled. So what I thought to do was to leave it, and then hopefully when this all passes and we're all together, and we can then have one of the greatest meetings ever and repeal this law.
Last question, Councilor Egan. Didn't we go down this road before, and it was beyond the jurisdiction of the executive order of the governor, and we kind of went down in flames, as they say, in my father's naval world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is a slightly different tack. So the last tack, the, the, the governor in his series of executive orders wrote into one of his executive orders that no local government would pass an executive order without it that may have changed COVID instructions or restrictions without it being previously approved by the New York State Department of Health. And the mayor thought to require the masks then, this is very early in the pandemic, sent it to the Department of Health, and the Department of Health rejected it and allowed the mayor to correct my timeline, but I think rejected it on Saturday. We had to repeal our executive order, and then the governor adopted that same executive order Monday morning. So I think that might be correct, Mayor, if that's right.
That's right, and the whole point of doing that executive order was essentially to lead by example. And I can tell you how proud I am of that executive order, to be the first mayor in the state to do it, and one of the first in the country. And I heard, that it was liked and appreciated by the New York State Health Commission, and they liked it so much that it was then actually made state law. And so the whole point of that was to really send the message loud and clear, because I, at that time, as consulting with our medical community, our infectious disease specialists locally, that was the obvious choice. We saw that in South Korea, we saw it in the Czech Republic, we saw these other countries really flatten their curve. And it was so obvious that COVID-19 spreads through droplets, and that the masks were the obvious, good, one of the few tools that we had. So we really wanted to send that message loud and clear. And while it was rejected by the Department of Health, but it was subsequently passed very shortly thereafter, making New York State one of the first states to do it. Now we've got the governor of Georgia still rejecting those orders from mayors. So the mayor of Atlanta, Mayor Bottoms, actually issued a similar executive order, and it was still rejected by the governor of Georgia today, or this month. So we were very fortunate to be in a situation where we were able to get that and set a good example. So that's a totally different, as Councilor Egan said, totally different situation here. But I think, again, this public hearing, if it goes well, again, maybe we can lead again by example in Southampton Village.
So Russell, you put this forward, or the mayor put this forward?
I received this draft from Councilor today.
The mayor.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so this is going to go to a public hearing. Can
Correct.
we move on?
Yep. Well, we vote. All in favor for a public hearing?
Aye.
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 Okay. Next one's similar. Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby directs a public hearing to be held at 6 p.m. prevailing time on Thursday, August 13, 2020, to adopt a general charging section to the village code and update the fines under the code to a maximum of $2,000.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Councilor Egan, would you like to just expand on that?
Sure. Now I'll pivot from the mayor's initiative now to Trustee Allen's initiative on this fine section. Most villages have a fine section in the front to preserve both the enforcement for the police and also for our code enforcement and our village prosecutor, where they have what's called a charging section in the front that says any violations of this code can be up to a fine amount of, and say, $2,000. Most villages have moved that fine to $2,000. Trustee Allen and I, in discussion on some of the sections on the code, found that buried in the village code are some antiquated fine sections that are woefully inadequate as deterrent, which is what the purpose of the law is. And there are some codes that, for instance, that are $100 fines when they should be significantly higher than that. So the goal was to vest a greater discretion in the village prosecutor and in the village justice as they mete out punishment under the code, law and order, so to speak, and to bring this charging section up in line with all the other villages.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Board.
All right. Finally, so this actually has been voted on. Last resolution be Entertain a motion resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the mayor to enter into a license agreement with Hampton's Hot Yoga, subject to language approved by the village attorney.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Not in favor. And I'm harking back to my conversation with Counselor Egan, and maybe I'm off base, but I thought this flies in the face of the advice by the state comptroller, unless I'm missing something.
So, yes. So the concern with private property use or public property for use of the for a private undertaking is set forth and has its roots in the state constitution. And again, I know that this has been a very topic that's gotten a lot of attention, but this is the section of the New York State Constitution. State Constitution Article 7, Section 1 provides in part as follows. No county, city, town, village, or school district shall give or loan any money or property to or in aid of any individual or private corporation or association or private undertaking. Nor shall any county, city, town, village, or school district give or loan its credit or in aid of any individual or public or private corporation or association or private undertaking. So I think if the board is inclined to grant this business access to the park, what they must consider is, one, that it has a recreational value in general, and two, that there be some fair compensation for the license in exchange for the license. And generally, these kind of situations are pushed towards non-for-profit or private properties, not normally hosted on public properties. But if this board feels, based on the climate or the situation, that it should be hosted on a public property, let alone a park, there should be a reasonable license fee charged to that, commensurate to what that space would otherwise cost in a commercial field.
Hey, Brian, so how does that differ from, let's say, Art in the Park, farmers market, things like that, which we hold all throughout, the high seasons?
So yeah, the farmers market is probably the closest analogy. The Art in the Park, where that's kind of a civic organization. But farmers markets have been kind of viewed as the same thing. That's generally to support the economy with farmers and nutrition and local business, those kind of things. This is a local business that would be hosted, but the comptroller is very careful that when you're granting something, it has to be a generalized enhancement, not necessarily some kind of private subscription only or business setting such as that, but more along the lines of a general. So for instance, the concession at Cooper's Beach is a great example. That is an enhancement of the experience at the beach. And we're lucky to have a very good concessionaire, and that person pays a concession fee. It's along those kind of lines. And if there are alternative locations to be considered that might be hosted by non-for-profits that are also struggling with their budgets this year and potential shortfalls in their operations, that might be a good alternative location to consider. But I know that the comptroller, there are many, many opinions from the comptroller's office that talk about the concerns on forbidding, and I'll give another quote. It has been held, this is from a comptroller's opinion, 1985. This is actually on the leasing of school equipment to students, believe it or not, leasing of athletic equipment. It has been held that a municipality may not permit property acquired or held by it for public use to be wholly or partly diverted to a possession or use exclusively private. So if we are going to do this, one, we should consider what that license fee should, if we feel that it is a sufficient public purpose, that we should consider what that proper license fee would be.
Yeah, Brian, those are good points, and it's something that I think. No, I'm trying to look after for businesses in this time, because it has been just something that not many people have gone through before, and trying to help is one of our responsibilities as the village board. But then again, we also have to understand the public benefit and the things that you've gone over with the comptroller. Is there anything you recommend, Brian? Licensing fees? Is there? I mean, where's your real feeling for it? Because does this open us up to all sorts of, other avenues where people start saying, well, how do you choose one over another? Is there a bidding process then, like in the concession, is the example that you used?
Yeah, and it's not, it's close. Other villages, for instance, rent their parking lots to ice rinks, and they say, well, how does that happen? Well, there was a need for it. There was a popular referendum, say, to get that ice rink. There was an expression. They did it, and they rented it with a concession fee attached to it. If someone was hosting a generalized recreation activity for free, say, for instance, that might be something to consider for the recreational health of the village. But again, if this is, and again, I'm not really sure what the concept is, whether this was going to be strictly a business-based subscription kind of a service, that is definitely a private business using public property, and we use our public property for non-for-profits. We use our public property when we feel that a concessionaire would enhance the recreation experience at the village, and they pay for that privilege. So if a private business was going to pay for it, I mean, again, I think the board is right and sensitive to the concerns about COVID, and hopefully we never see this again in our lives. And trying to keep businesses alive to allow them to do certain things, such as what we expanded on sidewalks. But to give away parkland, we really should probably think about what would be a proper concession fee. And I would leave it up to the board to think what a proper percentage would be. Everyone here is business people who own their own businesses, small businesses. So if you think about I think you could make a good argument to the comptroller on this temporary basis. Again, just for these couple of weeks during the summertime. What your percentage is of rent? That might be defensible.
Councilor Egan, one other question. East Hampton just approved something that allows this use on alternate business commercial properties that are not designated for this type of use. So we do have a lot of commercial areas in the village. I did speak with the owner of this establishment. I want this establishment to succeed. If this is limited and has a sunset, and our risk as conveyed to the comptroller, if they should descend upon us, is relatively low, then I would be in favor of it. My only caution is they're not the only game in town, and this opens up, we need to be fair to everybody, and we want everyone to succeed. And I think this board is very pro-business, but I have to say, East Hampton is pushing people to alternate commercial sites. If anybody out there has a nice grassy lawn somewhere in the village, would you be so kind to let this establishment be there? But if we open it up to this, we have to open it up for everyone else, because I've already received an inquiry. And I think we need to sunset it, right? Which we would anyway, because nobody would want to do yoga at minus 20. Well, maybe they would. Maybe they really would want hot yoga.
Well, they have hot yoga, maybe cold.
Right.
All right, so we are in the middle of the vote. I have Mayor Warren and Trustee Parrish, aye. Trustee Allen, nay. Trustee Polaro.
Aye.
Okay. Now, on a question to the village attorney, and we can do this offline, the process for doing this, should we have some sort of application that others could also apply and use the same formula for them as well, or how do we move from this to an agreement?
I think that I'm going to need a direction from the board as to what either a percentage or a flat fee on a license fee you want to charge. Number one. Number two, we have to think about what the process is going to be. If other people are doing it, I mean, we can cross that bridge if we get additional interest, but I'm going to guarantee, based on that premier location of that park and how fine that is in Suffolk County, there is going to be interest. So I'm going to need a proposed either flat fee or a percentage on income, or however you want to structure it, for me to be able to write this license agreement.
All right, so I'll coordinate that starting tomorrow.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Russell. So that concludes our resolutions portion. And at this point, we have comments from board members. Of course, a good time to speak about committee updates, department updates, any interesting projects, events in the village. And typically, Trustee Ostremski kicks this off, but since he is not here this evening, Trustee Allen, thank you very much.
Mayor Warren, if I could just interrupt real quick. I know that we have stopped this second comment period, but I don't know whether you saw that there is someone who wants to make a public comment. I don't know if we're going to bypass it or.
I saw that we can do it now. Typically, in the regular meetings, we do the comment after the comment.
Okay. Oh, I apologize. You're right. You're right.
But do you think we should do it now, or maybe just do the regular?
Yeah, I apologize. Yep.
Okay.
Follow your normal format. Yep.
Rob, we see you. We definitely see you. You're up as soon as we're done with the comments, and thank you for your patience. We appreciate it. Trustee Allen, you can start. Thank you.
I'm good. The only thing I'll mention is thank you for approving the upkeep of appropriate fines. I know we have a swell of individuals living here now, and we welcome everyone. But yesterday, somebody counted 16 vehicles in 2 of our parking areas that had no permits. And then this morning, we saw huge volumes of trash because people don't want to open up the trash bins and put their trash in it. And thank you, Mayor Warren, for reaching out to DPW within minutes. And thank you, Gary, for now adding another shift to pick up the garbage. But I would like our community to understand that our village resources probably spend 25% of their time now sanitizing bathrooms, cleaning picnic areas, cleaning playgrounds, double, triple shifts on the cleanup of garbage cans. And we're all living in this very small community. We just need to be a little bit more considerate of each other. I would also like to make a comment that we are understaffed in our, not only dispatch, but in our building department. They, handle a lot of quality of life issues. They do a tremendous amount of inspections. Fortunately, everyone has confidence in our fabulous Southampton village, and the rate of house sales has exploded, but our CO transfers has exploded with it. And I'm hoping we can have a staff allocation discussion, potentially in exec session. And that's all I have. And thank you, and enjoy your summer.
Thank you very much, Trustee Allen. Some great points. Trustee Parrish.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you for that. Yes, parks. Been in contact with parks quite a few times a week. They're keeping themselves busy again with upkeep of the fields being brought back into play. They are keeping themselves active and moving along and doing a good job all on the streets too. Highway department, beaches, things like that, same thing. To Kimberly's point, please, people, if you're going to the beach and you're bringing food and you're leaving, please take it with you if it's full. It's something that, as much as we throw out there, we're really trying to accommodate, but we do have a large increase, and we do have a staff that is, not where it should be. If we have to bring in more people, that's something I think this board needs to discuss for hiring. But I ask you, please, pick up after yourselves and bring them home with you, so we don't have this litter. It brings rodents, it brings raccoons. I know on Road D there's a big raccoon problem. I've seen pictures of the cans being knocked over and torn up, and so really just ask the public to help us out in this aspect, because these employees do work hard. They put themselves at risk. Beaches going well. Reports from this past weekend were very good. I believe it was Saturday was a really, really, really strong day. Sunday, because of the fog, slowed down a bit, or I could have it reversed. I apologize. But Matt's been doing a great job. We started daily passes again on the weekends this weekend. We're capping them at 40 to start, so we're still really conscious of our residents and the people with not overcrowding. Again, they are doing a good job. And so I just wanted to say thank you all. And that is it. And thank you.
Trustee Parrish, is there anything else
No, I said that was done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. And Trustee Polaro.
Thank you, Mayor. Nothing from Justice Court to report. I will say that the new crosswalk at Halsey Neck and Hill Street was finished up today. There are signs pointing them out. Please be aware. Please slow down. I'm sure that will take place. So I was happy to see that taken care of this week. SAC, Southampton Arts Center, is having an opening this weekend, the 25th. So please stop by and see that. Have been working with SCC, Southampton Cultural Center, to try and see how best we could, to see what we can and can't possibly do going into August for concerts in the park. It would be wonderful if we were allowed to do that, including following all social distancing and following all of the requisites that would need to do. So it would be lovely to try and get that done. Also had Trustee Allen and I had a very good and constructive call yesterday with Pirates Conquer project. And so Mr. Crowdova was also on that call. So very hopeful that we have a good directive and a good momentum moving forward. And it would really be our hope that the whole board could put together a budget and have a budget for the next meeting in August, so that we really could take the steps that haven't been done in the past, and really look then at the capital budget and look at what we should encumber for this project going forward. So I really hope that we're able to do that for the next meeting. Other than that, I have nothing further to report.
All right, thank you very much. And regarding, as far as departments go, regarding the police department, I just wanted to extend, a very big thank you to Chief Cummings, as well as our entire department, as well as our TCOs. Southampton in the streets this past Saturday night was extremely well done, and it was done in large part, thanks to our DPW department working overtime, but also, really our Southampton Village Police Department that came down, executed it, perfectly, provided the right amount of, of officers on our streets, making sure that everything worked out smoothly, both providing, good operations, good, making everything safe and sound. So just wanted to extend a very big thank you to the entire Southampton Village Police Department for their really great work this past weekend. And with everything, we often forget that this is a very busy time. We've got more residents out here than in the past, and living out here full time. And it definitely, we definitely have to thank our police department for probably going above and beyond right now. So it's been a very busy last month or two, and again, just a very big thank you. And TCOs have also done a great job. We see them. I see them every day. And they're really doing excellent. So wanted to thank everybody. With that said, we have our public comment section here, and I know Rob Coburn has been waiting very patiently. So Rob, we'll turn this over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. I wanted to make a few very quick comments, and most of them are good news. First of all, On behalf of the Clean Water Committee, I want to thank you for the adoptions that you did tonight of both the plan and the hydrogen peroxide treatment, at least the empowerment of Russ to move forward on that, or Gary Gillespie, excuse me. Paradoxically, it's not a huge change from the DEC plan. It's really nothing new, but on the other hand, it's really important to the committee, and it's another sign to the village that you're continuing what was begun back in 2009 with the adoption of the first Lake Agawam plan. It's just a sign of progress. I know there's too many people to thank for input into all of this, and but I just want to thank you for the adoption of that plan. I want to echo Mark Parrish and thank Gary Gillespie and his team and the people on this board who worked on the crosswalks that have been installed, both at the Catholic Church and now down at Halsey Neck Lane, and the signs that go along with them. Anything that can be done to push forward the comprehensive plan goal of better pedestrian access and pedestrian and bicycle safety in the village is great. And as a resident of Hill Street in particular, I just want to extend my appreciation. The next one is actually not necessarily such great news. I sent an email, I think, to all of you just on the issue of enforcement. We have lower enforcement resources than other villages around us, and things like sign enforcement and certain zoning enforcements and clear crosswalks and all that sort of thing happen at a lower rate in this village than I observe in some other villages around us. And, although I've stepped down from the ARB, I still receive calls and emails from people who think I'm on it. I've received more than a dozen emails specifically on signs related to Old Town over the Old Town project, where 3 signs have been put up that I understand are not approved. And, people notice these things, and it feels as though enforcement is not as robust as it could be. And I don't intend this as a criticism, Chief Cummings, of you and your team. I know Angel Perez does a great job. But in most villages, some or all of that zoning-related enforcement is actually a building department function, and we don't have that in our village. So I just ask you to look into that and focus on that a little bit. 2 other very quick things just from this meeting. One, it feels to me like a good litmus test for all these committees is, do the committees have an ongoing task that they are accomplishing and moving forward on an ongoing basis? Or are they a resource that's valuable to you as a committee to throw a question or a research topic or to get some additional color and information? And if the answer is no to those, there may be other ways for those people to be involved, but those committees would seem to me to not necessarily be helpful to the village. And last quick comment, sorry, it's a bit of a potpourri, but on the video loop idea in the I know that's going to be subject, maybe, Councillor Egan, to some sort of further confirmation or conformity issues with the local code. But I would just say, in doing whatever steps that takes, you might want to make sure that it is that it takes into account or separates itself, distinguishes itself from signage code, because the signage definition talks about signs within a window. And the only other thing I'd say is the moving, videos to me are interesting if it's a loop of static pictures, but I think you might want to consider the idea of prohibiting motion pictures and moving videos, which
3 minutes.
Yep, I know can be distracting to motorists in particular. Those are my 3 minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rob. Russell, that was the first time in months I've heard anyone say 3 minutes. And while it's typically a thing you don't want to hear, it actually felt good because it was the first time we're able to ever get a public comment. So thank you for the 3 minutes, Rob.
Sure.
I know before we make a motion to adjourn, I know Trustee Allen just quickly wanted to mention 2 things we forgot. I think you may be on mute though, Trustee Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the board has agreed to continue having Southampton in the streets this coming Saturday. As several of you mentioned, it's been an overwhelming success. I think the thinking is that the start date, per feedback to the mayor and many of us on this board is the start time will be 7 p.m. And this board will also deliberate on a future schedule, whether it be every Saturday through Labor Day or every other Saturday through Labor Day. We should have that decision within 24 hours. Thank you, Mayor. The only other piece I wanted to add is that Gary's team painted one of the concrete boulders as a ladybug and then offered up the painting of the concrete boulders to the youth committee under supervision, and we are providing the supplies. So hopefully that will be a little bit more aesthetically attractive when the streets are being closed. If I misrepresented anybody on this board, let me know.
All right, I think that that sounds pretty good. With that said, I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Trustee Parrish, I read your lips. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good.
All right, thank you, everyone.